Tell me when you're ready. It's live? Okay. We're going to be discussing, today we're going to go through we'll call the last aspect of, pretty much the last aspect of Makas, Ptza'im, as it refers to Makhabar, and we'll have a chance, we'll deal with other instances of when she sees blood and it's not mitzad remach mastashmish and not mitzad veses. A brief introduction of what we learned until now. We have a machlekes, call it machlekes Ramo and Beis Yosef, regarding Gemaka, if it's the Rashba, understanding the Rashba. The Rashba says that when she's, even if she does not feel that the blood is actually flowing from the Makkah, we still tail it in the Makkah. And if she says she has a Makkah, we're tailing the Makkah. The Ramah and Beis Yosef and a lot of other people explain that what the Rashba refers to is that she does not have to know that her Makkah is Maitzidam. It's enough that she knows that she has a Makkah. That's how they understood the Rashba. The Shach holds that she has to know that the Makkah is Maitzidam. She doesn't have to know that this Makkah is Maitzidam now, but she has to know that the Makkah is Maitzidam. And she doesn't have to know that the Makkah is Maitzidam right now. The Alter Rebbe explains, goes through and explains that the only way to understand the Rashba is like the Shach, and he then goes in Sifkat Nachav Gimel and summarizes pretty much when you could be Mekel, when you could be Machmer. And the way the Alter Rebbe, where the summary, we'll call the summary of the Alter Rebbe starts, is in Sifkat Nachav Gimel, the Alter Rebbe, and we went through it before, I'm just summarizing it quickly. It's on page Ein Hey, umikol moken lemaisen lismach alamo v'siyaite. Yeah, that's where it starts. L'hokel. So when could you be mekel? Alter Rebbe gives you a bunch of situations. First, he says we're talking about the shasat chag gadol. What's a shasat chag gadol? Alter Rebbe says shasat chag gadol she'eni yochel litar lebayla. She can't become tired for a long time, either because she finds blood on the aid, and she does not know if this blood comes from the makar, this blood comes from the tzdadim, maybe the blood comes from the makar and the makar, and the blood comes from the makar and the tzdadim, and for the sake of shalei lahitzi isha mebayla, and you also have other tzdadim lahakel, yeah, and he explains what that's lahakel, then there's certain scenarios it could be matter according to the Ramah. You could rely on the Ramah. Without Zainikim. What's the Tzdadim Lahakil? For example, she has a Makkah in the Makir, or she has a Makkah in the Beis Achitzin, and we know that there's blood collected in this Makkah. We don't know if the Makkah is actually Maitzidam. So when a woman has a Vesas Kavua and Shalei B'Shaz Vesta, you could be Matir. Why? Because you have a suffix Sveika, you have a suffix Argosha, and you have a suffix, maybe it's from the Tzdadim. Yeah, now, just to point out that this does not work with the Madura Basra, where the Alter Rebbe in Madura Basra and Kuf Pei Gimel, the Alter Rebbe is more machmer when it comes to these Shilas of Argosha, but let's leave that aside for now. When the Alter Rebbe continues, when we're talking about a woman that has a Makkah in the Beis Achitzin, we know for sure, a woman that does not have a Vesas Kavua, you can't be Mekel if the Makkah is in the Beis Achitzin. She does not have a Vesas Kavua. Because every time blood comes out, there's only one suffix. Is it from the Makkah, is it from the Tzdadim? You don't have two Sveikas.
Can Yamin Betuchim be applied on her?
I don't know if so easy to apply Yom Betuchim for a woman who doesn't have Vesas Kavua. Mitzat Svara, yeah, but I don't know if you could actually rely on it. If the Makkah is in the Makar, Alter Rebbe says you could be Mekel even if she does not have a Vesas Kavua if there's no Hargosha. Then Alter Rebbe continues even further, and even if there is a Hargosha, but you're not sure where the Hargosha comes from, whether the Hargosha is from the Makar or the Hargosha is from the Tzdadim, Then, b'shas atcha godel, shaloi lahotzi yishem mebayla, obviously we're talking about that she doesn't have a vessels kavua, then if the makkah is in, we know the makkah is in the makir, and there's argosha, we don't know where the argosha comes from, then after, the Alter Rebbe says, after lahakel, b'shas atcha godel, shaloi lahotzi yishem mebayla, but he concludes that paragraph, it doesn't conclude in that matter. And then Alter Rebbe goes further and says, even if she has, if she has a vesses kavua, and we're talking about shaloi b'shas vesta, so we know for sure it's not a vesses, so you could be mekel, really, even shaloi b'shas atchak, if the makkah is in the rechem, if you know for sure the makkah is in the rechem, you could be mekel, even the shaloi b'shas atchak. And if the makkah is in the tzdadim and not in the rechem, you can only be mekel when there is a bdika, you do a bdika not when she's stam roya, when she does a bdika as aid, then you could be mekel, but not when she sees. And Alter Rebbe then goes further and says, this is talking about when it's not roya machmas tashmish. If she's roya machmas tashmish, it's a different din. If the makkah is in the makir, we know the makkah is in the makir, but you don't know if the makkah is maitzidam or not, and you know for sure that the blood came from the makir. You know there's a makkah in the makir. You know the blood came from the makir. You just don't know if this makkah is moitzidam from the makir or not. Then berei machmas tashmish, you can't be maker without shiva nakim. Even if she has vesses kavua, even if it's not b'shas vesta, even if she has vesses kavua and it's not b'shas vesta, and even if she sees with the aid, even without argosha. You can't be made without shiva nakim, or you could be mekel that she's not a sort of labayla, that's a separate discussion, but not without shiva nakim. Now, what happens if you don't know that the blood is coming from the makir? So you have a suffix where the blood is coming from. So back to what we said before, if she has a hargosha, but you don't know where the hargosha is coming from, Yesh lahakol, Alter Rebbe says you should be mekel, even if she does not have a vesses kavua, without shiva nakim, without tefillah. Now what happens if you know that the makkah for sure is in the bayis achitzin, and not in the makir, but you don't know where the blood is coming from, whether the blood is coming from the makir, the blood is coming from the sides, you can't be mekel, even if she has a vesses kavua shlei b'shas vesta, without shiva nakim and tefillah. And even if there's no argosha, even if she's roya be'ed, especially because you could be mevarer. When you have a makkah in the bayis achitzin, you could be mevarer where the makkah came from, and a suffix which you could be mevarer is not really a suffix. Yeah, that is pretty much the second half of the Alter Rebbe's Sifkot Mechav Gimel. In the same Sif Hey that Alter Rebbe started over there, the Ramah writes that because it's all based on the Ramah. The Ramah over there writes if a woman does not have a vesses kavua and you have a suffix if the blood came from the makir from the tzdadim, we say it's a sfek sveika. Yeah, that's a sfek sveika that the Alter Rebbe doesn't hold of. The Shach doesn't hold of. What's the Alter Rebbe doesn't fully hold of this sfek sveika? He explains when it applies, when it doesn't apply. If she does not have a vesses kavua and there's a suffix if the blood comes from the makir, blood comes from the tzdadim, we say we are toilet in a makkah because of sfek sveika that Ramah says. Suffix, first suffix is that it come from the makir, came from the tzdadim. Second suffix, even if it came from the makir, maybe it came from the makkah. But if you know for sure that it came from the makkah, then to be toilet you need to know for sure that the makkah is maitzidam.
If you know for sure it came from the makkah?
If you know for sure it came from the makir, if you know for sure it came from the makir, the only way you could be toilet is if you know for sure that the makir is maitzidam, according to the Ramah. And this comes Alter Rebbe Sifkot Mechav Daled, where he discusses the whole concept of sex fake over here. He starts by saying the Shach obviously disagrees with it. He says, because based on Sefer HaTruma, that the Shach brings Sefer HaTruma, that the woman who has a makkah v'isemakim, and she doesn't know if the makkah is maitzidam or not, if she does a bdika and she finds blood, she's tmeya even without any argosha. Even without a argosha that comes from the rechem. and she can't be toilet in the makkah. And from that understands the shach that even if she's not sure that it comes from the makkah, but she has a suffix if it comes from the makkah, she still can't be toilet in the makkah. And you can't consider it a sfek sveika. The sfek sveika doesn't work. Why? Because be'etzem one suffix. It's not a suffix. You're going to say if you don't know where it comes from, even if you don't know it comes from the makkah, you only have one suffix here. You have, all these fakes are really one suffix. And the Shach explains that in Yeridea, in Kuf Yud, when you have one suffix, it's not considered, even if you could divide the sfeik, create sfeik out of it, if it's really one suffix, it doesn't work. What's the one suffix over here? Is it dam nida? Is it not dam nida? That's the only suffix we have. Since we only have one suffix, we can't be meiko. Now Torah brings the Mechas Yaakov, and Mechas Yaakov argues on the Shach, and he says it is a sfeik, because even if you're going to say that it's not from the makar, that it is from the makar, it's not from the tzdadim, you still have a suffix, maybe it came from the makkah inside the makar. And this sveka really only works when you have a makkah for sure in the makar. But if the makkah is in the bais achitzin, then you don't have a sveka, because you only have one suffix. Is it min tzdadim? And we don't care if it's min tzdadim or min makkah shebetzdadim, or is it min rechem. The only way you can have a sveka is when you have it inside the rechem, then you have a suffix, shal min tzdadim, shal min rechem. If it's min rechem, shal min makkah berechem. Right, when it's a makkah in the bais achitzin, even according to Mechas Yaakov, there's no sveka. And that's how the Alter Rebbe understands the Sefer HaTruma, and he says that's one way of understanding Sefer HaTruma, or he could explain Sefer HaTruma is talking about in Roya Shaloi Machmas Tashmish, and that I was talking about that it is Roya Machmas Tashmish, because when it's Roya Shaloi Machmas Tashmish, you don't have the suffix Shema Doichek Eivorim cause the blood to come out. When you are Roya Machmas Tashmish, you have that suffix of Doichek Eivorim, and therefore you could be toile in the tzdadim because of Doichek Eivorim separately. Mashenka, when she's just seeing without Machmas Tashmish, you only have one suffix, as Tzdadim min hamakar. Right, that is here. Now what happens if she sees through, she has pain? If she has pain, then we went through previous shiurim about it, and I'm going to summarize it again because I want to get to what I want to talk about today. The din of the pain is in Seif Zayin, where the Makhabar talks about if she checks and she finds the blood only on one side, and then you could be toilet in the makkah on that side. And if she feels pain, ka'ev, when she touches that side, and she doesn't feel pain anywhere else, also the Makhabar writes of Loshen Kol Shekin. That the Alter Rebbe comes in Seif Katan Lamedalad and the Kontesachin over there. And the first thing he explains to you is, when could you rely on the ka'ev, on the pain that she feels when she does a bdika, is when the blood is found on the same place where the pain is found at every time. I mean, she always feels pain, let's say, on the right side, and she always sees blood on the right side. Every time she does a bdika, she feels pain when she touches it, and then you could be toilet in that makkah. But if you have pain, and the blood is not always coming from that side, it's not a proof that the blood came as a result of this makkah. We are choishesh, maybe she became nideh during the time that she had this pain, and not that the ka'ev was what caused the blood. That means the ka'ev. Rather, the bleeding might have caused the vessels might have caused the pain, or could be that the ka'ev just caused the vessels to come early before its time. But it's not that this ka'ev is a raya on the makkah that is bleeding. And the Alter Rebbe over there concludes in this Sifkat Lamedalad in the parentheses, in the it's in parentheses, and that Tzemach Tzedek we mentioned. Tzemach Tzedek says maybe it's from the Ma'aril because he has a kash in it. It doesn't answer. It doesn't explain the Alter Rebbe over there. He has a kash. Says maybe it's from the Ma'aril. And he says Lamaise, you have to be Mahmed like a Chacham Tzvi, that you can't be mekel in a Safek Isur Koris in any form of pain that you could be choishish, that you could think maybe the blood came from the mocker before the time that it was supposed to come. And all that it did was that this pain was what caused the vessels to come. Essentially, it's not that you feel pain and that the pain and that means there's a makah and you scratch the makah and the makah started bleeding. No, you touched the ka'ev, caused the body to release dam nida, which is asur. Now there is a shitta which is not mentioned here, which discusses basically, and there are rabbanim which will be mekel based on that. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Alter Rebbe, even though it was before the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe Chal doesn't quote it. Which is if the dam doesn't come in its regular way of coming, which is in a specific time, and it's caused by pain and this and that, you could be toile lahakol. Basically, we look at the nature of things. We don't look. So it could be a woman's going to see a full-on period, but it's not in the right time, and it was triggered by something external, by pain, and lav dafka is going to be usher according to him. Certain shitta. We'll get to it soon. Maybe we'll mention his name. Well, the mice you can't rely on it. Yeah, so basically the Alter Rebbe says in any type you have to be lechatchil, should be machmer like a chacham tzvi. In any type of pain that you have a chashash, maybe the blood came from the mocker as dam nida before the time, and the pain is what caused the vessels. Then you can't be mekel. But if you have a certain form of pain that you know that this pain is not shayach to cause the vessels to come, the only shaila is whether this pain caused this blood to come out, then you could rely on the taz, and you don't have to worry you don't have to be choishish the chumas hacham tzvi v'hu adin l'chlok hayetzibay kol she'en derech adam nida lovoi al yidei ke'ev zeh. If the dam nida doesn't come as a result of this ke'ev, is not shaykh to come as a result of this ke'ev, then you could rely on the chacham tzvi. You could rely on the taz. You don't have to be choishish the chumas hacham tzvi. That is in the parenthesis in the pnim of the Alter Rebbe. Then you have the Kuntres Achron, and after the Kuntres Achron, you have the second part of the Kuntres Achron, Mashchaz of Chacham Tzvi, and Alter Rebbe takes apart the Chacham Tzvi over there, and the Alter Rebbe there explains as follows: being that it is a very realistic possibility that the blood that she sees when she's in pain came from the actual makkah, because a makkah by definition is something which is moitzidam, derech ha-makkah moitzidam. Therefore, a woman remains in the cheskas tahara, and we loy chayshinam, we don't have this chashash. Maybe the pain caused the vessels to come early. Rather, we say b'chal didn't come from the makkah, and we're not chayshish. Maybe it came also from the makkah, which has a cheskas tahara. And the Alter Rebbe ends by saying that all this is talking about a makkah, which is by semokim, and in such a scenario, you could rely on this. Why? Because in that time you could to be toile that the makkah which is inside the rechem, maybe the makkah inside the rechem could have also brought about dam nida. But really, the pain, maybe the pain is what caused the blood to come. But then you could rely on this svara that the blood which came as a result of the makkah, and the makkah is meitzidam. But if the makkah is somewhere else, not in Oisimokim, then you can't say that the blood from there flowed to Oisimokim and came out. No, the only time you could rely on this is the makkah is Oisimokim in general. Whether it's a rechem anywhere else, the makkah is Oisimokim, then you can rely on pain. And then we have the tzemach tzedek, which we went through, which first he goes into the whole explanation whether a dam maka, which mixes, a dam chayusa, which mixes with dam nida, goes to the dam nida, is it mutter, is it aser? And the maskon of the tzemach tzedek, achar kos v'kol anal, the end of that tzemach tzedek, where he says, achar kos v'kol azman b'meshach zman v'rat yishen sat shuvazu. And his maskona is that if it is a maka which is not in the makar, then even if blood comes as a result of the maka, she's still tamei, and you can't consider it dam maka. When could you consider it dam maka? When you see that the blood is coming from this blood is coming from the maka. Like when the blood comes out with pus, and you know there's a maka over there. Or that you mamish have a maka in the side, and then we don't say it's dam chayusa that came as a result of the maka, we say it's dam maka which came out. But still you have to have a hargosha that it came, and we're talking about when she has it over there, we're so macham because she has a hargosha that is coming from the makar. Obviously, if she's not margish that it came from the makar, you have a svek. Maybe it's bechal not from the makar. Maybe it's a dam. Maybe it's from the makar. Maybe it's not from the makar, from the zdadim. Maybe it's from the makar. Maybe it's a dam makar. That is a summary of what we did. Now let's move on to practical. There is there's something called. We'll go through different scenarios. Something called uterine polyps. There's polyps and there is fibroids. There are two main things. Polyps is one thing, fibroids is something else. They both fibroids. Fibroids. F-I-B, fibroids. Fibroids. F-I-B-R-O-I-D-S. First one, polyps, is that, okay, let's go back. The rechem has a lining. The lining has blood vessels. These blood vessels carry dam nida. When time comes, it generates blood. When the time comes for nida, the lining sheds and blood comes out. Obviously, if the woman does not become pregnant, the egg does not get implanted and it releases the blood out. When a woman has polyps, it's essentially kinds of growths which grow inside the rechem, and it's the tissue of the lining of the rechem which grows. It could be a small thing, it could be a big thing. It could cause. Usually it's not. It's benign. It's not yenamachla. Sometimes it could turn into yenamachla, and you have to take care of it. They could be small. They could be big. It could be tiny. It could be like mamish, like a ball, like 2 inches. What does this cause? First of all, it causes pain. But it also causes that there is going to be, she might see irregular periods. Now, the causes for it could be health style, could be coming to menopause, could be hormonal imbalance. There's no clear reason what causes, specific cause for it. But what causes, it could cause, there should be a vessus she'enei kavua, essentially it could come at any time. And it could cause that when the vessus comes, it should be more painful, and it could come stam bleeding between vestus. Those are 3 main things that are relevant to us. All right, now, mitzad, somebody could make a mistake and think that this is considered a Makhabar. It's not a Makhabar. This is the veins of dam nida are releasing the dam at a specific time when, instead of release, it happens to,
It comes out of this polyp or it comes out of
the polyp is the growth of the same veins. The tissue of the rechem is growing out. Not out of the rechem, inside the rechem it's growing. So it's the same veins releasing the same kind of blood, just not in a regular fashion. So it's not a maka berachem. It's a machla in the rechem. It's not a maka, it's a machla in the rechem, which causes dam nida to come at irregular times. That is not a maka berachem. It's regular dam nida not coming at a regular time. And that is what we could use the Alter Rebbe's lashon, a ka'ev, which is goyrem the dam nida to come shalei bizmanei. Now, if she sees it during Beis Tashmish, and she goes to a doctor and she finds that this is what it is, and she could solve it, she's not become a surah l'bayla. You know what the reason is. But she's not tahira, because it's dam nida.
It's generally treatable.
Yeah.
Why is it not? Why are we considering it machmas tashmish?
We're not considered machmas tashmish. So she's not a surah l'bayla. She has to take care of it. She's not a surah l'bayla. There's certain ways of dealing with it. So there's operations, there's hormonal treatments, there's operation. You have to know what the size of the instrument is. There shouldn't be a shaila of psichas hakever. That's a separate discussion.
Do we find the pasuk in the early place talking about this?
No.
Why is here psichas hakever if there's anyways dam coming out of it?
When she's going to do,
There's a procedure that taking something out and there's going to be dam anyway coming out.
lav dafka. Someone's just going to go check it. When they do a procedure and they cut, there's something else. Not always is it cut. Sometimes they inject something to block the veins from doing, or they burn the veins, or whatever it is. Huh? They electrify. Yeah. Then you have the fibroids. Fibroids do not turn into yenamachla. They are not made from soft tissue. Rather, the fibroids are also called myomas. Huh? Myomas. Myomas. They could also be small, they could be big, but they're not made from the soft tissue. They are muscles. The muscles is what muscle cells and the different kind of tissue, which that is usually grows inside the walls of the uterus. Sometimes it can grow outside the walls, but also within the uterus. And they cause similar symptoms. They could cause, again, that when she is a niddah, it bleeds longer, heavier, and sometimes it could bleed earlier. And there is pain. When there is polyps, the pain is not the same as when there's fibroids. Fibroids, there is pain. There is lav dafka, this pain. When there's fibroids, there is pain. Usually is pain. So here we're not talking about what of the lashon of Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek is talking, we'll use the exact lashon. He talks about the veins of dam nida. I don't remember the exact. It's not the same. It's not the veins of dam nida growing. It's the muscles that are holding that are part of the rechem. Those they create a growth. And what it does is this specific thing does not release blood. It causes the rechem to release blood. Puts pressure and it releases that causes. Usually doesn't have actual blood. And even lu yitzur, you would be able to say that there is blood in a dam nitzrar, You don't know if blood comes out of it. You don't know where the blood is coming from because it's in the rechem. You can't be toilet in it. Some ways of doing it is that they put silicone into those arteries to block the blood flow, and then those arteries shrink. Huh?
Does it also cause machmas? Does it also cause damachmas?
We don't know what if this causes damachmas. No. If you know for a fact, if a doctor, a doctor would be able to find that this fibroid has blood and it's bleeding, then it would be a makah berachem, and you could be telling it. It's very hard to determine that, and therefore we are not making. There are certain shittas which, based on the misunderstanding of the Metzias, are mater fibroids as a makah berachem, but it's not a makah berachem. It's a makah, but it's not meitzidam. Derech it's not meitzidam. Now we'll move to the next thing. Something called endometriosis, which is endometriosis. Huh? Endometriosis. I'll spell it, teach you English. endometriosis. You got to know this because you're going to be answering these shilas one day. What is this? This is when we explained that the inside of the rechem is a specific, the lining is this kind of tissue which grows inside. This endometriosis is that this tissue goes outside of the rechem. It starts growing into the outside of the rechem, into the cervix, into the opening of the rechem. And it's very painful. And if a bdika is done very far in, it could touch it. And there's ways of dealing with it. It works, it's mamish the same as the inside of the rechem. When there is between the end of one vessus and the beginning of the next vessus, it grows, it thickens, then comes the vessus, it breaks up and it releases blood. And
Is the pressure make it down? Is the pressure make it down? If you touch it, so it's going to be pressure to make it down?
Yeah, it's going to be moitzidam, but it's not a makah. The dam.
You said such blood before?
It's dam nida. It comes from the same. It thickens, and.
But the flow of blood is outside the rechem.
It's by the opening of the rechem. The rechem doesn't end in the rechem. It ends a little bit under. The top part of the cervix is also considered part of the rechem. It's a hemshech of the rechem.
The bdika could touch it?
Technically. If it grows a lot, yeah.
So then why is that considered down which is coming from the rechem?
It's a hemshech of the rechem. It's the same blood which is there. Elamai. That,
That might not be psichas piyamaka, but
It's psichas piyamaka, but it's dam. It's dam nida, same dam nida. If it comes in the regular. Now what could happen is that if you touch it, you could, because it's very sensitive, it could. Wait.
Medically, it's dam nida. From halacha.
It comes the same time as dam nida. It doesn't come separate times.
Does it come with that blood?
No. Now, if you touch it, it could bring blood. So if there is a cut in it, what it does is it's very, very sensitive. It could get cut. It could get things, and then if it gets cut, and you know there's a cut over there, then that is a makkah. That's moitzi dam for sure, and the dam that is moitzi is not dam nida.
Why is it not dam nida?
It's not coming as nida. It's not that the blood. It's not that the body is releasing the blood. There was a cut. The cut was made. There's a cut, there's a scar. Because it's outside the rechem, it scars easier.
It's coming through the veins of the
But it's not dam nida. It's soft, inflamed tissue, which bleeds. It doesn't bleed. When you cause it to bleed, what is a makah berachem? A makah berachem is when there's a cut inside the rechem.
So if a woman does a bdika and touches this, so she scratching.
If she's scratching that thing, and you would know that would l'chayra be considered a makkah, that is good. You know there's a makkah, and the makkah has maitzidam. It wouldn't be dam nida. But if it releases it, then it's considered dam nida. Releases it by itself. There's ways of dealing with it also. First, you start with anti-inflammatories to shrink it. They could burn parts of it, whatever. It's complicated, not so complicated procedures. But all of these are essentially not makis berachem. There are things that grow, they're not a makah berachem, which is maitzidam. What's a makah berachem, which is maitzidam? It's very important to understand the definition of a makah berachem, which is maitzidam. A makah berachem, or b'chlal makah, which is maitzidam, means a cut, a scratch, a something which, when now, that will release blood. The fact that there could be pain because of this something that's growing, in fact, this could release dam shalei bisman, it doesn't make it makkah. So what's examples of things which will actually cause makkah b'seich harechem? The most common examples are what we call biopsies. Sometimes when they want to know if there is a certain growth inside the rechem, and the doctors need to know if this is a yanamachle chas v'shalom or it's not. What they would do is they do a biopsy. What's a biopsy? A biopsy is that they take they put something very thin into the uterus that scratches inside the uterus and takes a little piece of tissue from. Huh? No, it's a very thin. Soft, relatively soft piece. It looks like a noodle, a cooked noodle, soft, and it scratches over there and takes it out. It's a catheter, essentially. It's a catheter, which is thin, and inside the catheter is even a smaller tube that's going in that scratches and takes a piece out, and then they goes around the rechem, looking in different places to see what it is. And they scratch and they chop a piece and it takes it out and then they put it to test. They put it in the laboratory to see if it has yanamachle or not, if it's something else. Sometimes you have another kind, what's called a Papel Biopsy, I think that's the name of it. Also, it's similar. It's not made to detect yanamachle. It's made for other things to detect, but it's the same idea. What this does is essentially it scratches the rechem. Right afterwards, for a day or 2 days, the rechem is going to be bleeding. And you know for a fact that there is a mak in the rechem until that heals. So if a woman had that biopsy done, the Yemei Tahara, and she saw blood right afterwards, a little bit of blood, we know the blood came from the rechem, we know there's a mak in the rechem, you could be toilet in that mak in the rechem.
Why don't you say that's dam nida starts coming out?
It's not dam nida.
That's the case of
It's a makkah in the rechem it's not causing dam nida to come out. It's dam, huh?
If IUD scratches the side.
There's no way of knowing if IUD actually scratches it. And we don't know. If there will be a way to see that the IUD is scratching the side, then maybe it could be mekel. But we don't know that. When you would know it, for sure, yeah. Taka, if you have for the copper IUD and you know for sure that the doctor is able to tell you a certainty that it's scratched and the scratch caused bleeding to come out, then yeah. When you do a biopsy, you know you scratched, you know you took a piece out and your piece came out with blood. So you know you just caused bleeding. You just cut something out of the rechem, you know it's bleeding. IUD, there's no way of knowing. Which goes back to what I mentioned before from the Tzemach Tzedek also regarding the doctors, that the difference between a doctor who knows for sure, tells you for sure what the situation is, for this woman, or a doctor that tells you that this thing by all women causes this. That's not enough to rely on to be Isser Kodesh. But if a doctor tells you this woman has this thing and this thing is for sure Meitzidam, it's a Makhabar, then it's fine.
Why? polyps, if it's not Bishas Vesta, why is it not considered a Kamaka?
Because it releases blood by itself as an nida. The idea of a polyps is that it's a growth inside the rechem, and it causes those veins to start releasing blood at irregular times.
The veins
Of the srigei dam nida. I think the Lashon Tzach is srigei dam nida. The veins of dam nida.
causes down from the whole rechem or down from where the polyp is?
I don't know.
There's a physical bump over there which can be seen, right?
Right.
So if it's
But
only
that-
down from there.
It's moitzi from the veins around. It causes there should be blood coming from the rechem. Dam nida coming from the rechem. It causes the lining will shed and there will be dam coming from the rechem.
Can I ask you last year from Farkash about this?
Yeah, what did he
What
say?
was this year that you said that it's not good for the
I don't remember. That's one of the things I don't remember. I always check in the books when someone asks me a question.
May I ask what question?
Now, there's another thing which is done. Right? Now, when they do biopsies, depending on what they have, depending on how much they have to check, that's how much they're going to scratch. They could be taking from 10 places, they could be taking from 2 places, they could be taking from 20 places. If there's a bunch of things growing over there, they'll be scratching in a bunch of places. If there's only one thing, it'll be one thing. There's another thing which is done. Also important to know. When women undergo fertility treatments, IVF, Lamashal. IVF. It's a form of fertility treatments. Now, Teva, the way the Eibusher created the world is that when the zera of the husband goes into the egg, fertilizes the egg, then the egg has to get implanted, has to get attached into the rechem, and it will grow over there. If it does not implant into the rechem, there's no pregnancy. The egg will just get released. Sometimes, if the lining of the uterus of the rechem is not in the right matzav to absorb, to catch it, there's not going to be pregnancy. Some women have a problem with it. Sometimes even IVF is not going to help in such a scenario because you're not solving the problem. The problem is the rechem is not able to catch the thing. So it's one of the ways to do it is sometimes they scratch the rechem. They put something in, they start scratching in there. Why do they scratch it? The svara, if you scratch it, and they were able to prove that it works quite a few times, it causes the body to regenerate the cells that are needed over there. And when it's redone now, it's upon chadashes, it works better. So that is also makhabar. Scratching. They actually scratch and they cause scratches in the rechem to be able for the rechem to regenerate the area of the lining to maybe should be easier for the embryo to be absorbed into the rechem. That also is a makhabar rechem. It's called endometrial scratching, endometrial injury. They call it an injury, they call it scratching, but that's the idea of it. They put a little plastic tube, a hard plastic tube, and they start scratching around in the area over there to be able to do it.
It's not too big, it's not considered something more.
It's tiny. Those instruments are tiny.
How big is considered something?
This is the Kolel, like I said, you're talking about 2 millimeters. Huh? What? Saying is these things are 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters, the actual piece. They're not putting in something that's not putting in a broom. It's something very thin. Another thing that they do is, like we mentioned before, there's what we said is endometriosis, which is when there's these growths. There's other ones. One of the ways of doing it, which they say is essentially one of the best ways of dealing with it, is that they cut excision surgeries. They cut the pieces that are, they cut and they stitch. They cut and they stitch. They cut it out and they stitch. Mamash surgery. You can be in the hospital for a day, stay overnight. This is under full sedation, and they do surgeries. For women, chas v'shalom, they have to take out a growth. They're also going to do surgery and cut. They're going to cut and they're going to stitch. Where's the cut and stitch going to be? In places which is in the rechem, right around the rechem. Those cuts are going to be causing the woman to bleed. After the surgery, the woman can bleed for 2-3 days. Usually the bleeding slows down and stops, but that is, if it's done b'shas taharasa, the woman is going to be. That's not if the instruments are not shiur of psichas hakever, then it's going to be considered a Makhabar, and she could be toiled in it. In general, we tell people to do all these things before they. The best time to do it is when she's anyways niddah, and then you don't have to worry about it. You have to start going into shilas because when a doctor does now, there's sometimes aside for what's in the rechem, now let's go outside the rechem. In the cervix is very sensitive. There's no nerves over there, so there's no pain, but the actual tissue is sensitive. So when they do any form of different tests that they do, it causes scratches, it causes cuts, a lot of things that happen over there, and those are also considered makas, which she could be toila. She comes back from the doctor. That's why when you go to the doctor, any procedure, the questions that have to be known is, first of all, what was done, where it was done, what instrument they used, how far they went, and did the doctor see blood? And these things, for sure, you're going to see blood and all the things I mentioned to you. Because the mamish causes cuts, so sometimes he's not going to see blood, and he's going to see blood. A doctor is trusted when he tells you that he saw blood. Yes. If a doctor is a oiber chacham, he starts telling you, I saw blood, but it didn't come from here, but I saw it from there, and it's not from there, and you're not really, he starts pasking for you, then you have a problem.
He says he didn't see blood, you trust her?
Yeah.
The thing you said before about scratching,
Yeah.
that's damaka, it's not damita?
Damaka.
Why?
Because it's not.
You said this word about that, anything from inside the rechem is the same.
No, when it releases the blood,
When it releases the natural way.
when it releases the natural way, that is not, you can't say that because there is a polyp over there, it became makkah. No. If you scratch it, yeah, it's a makkah. If you scratch the rechem, it's also a makkah.
Even though you're taking out
What's a makkah b'seicha rechem? You make a cut. Like a cut in the rechem, inside the rechem. So what blood is in there? Blood that in 2 weeks will be dam niddah. In a week and a half will be dam niddah. But at that moment, it's not considered dam niddah. So these are just examples of what would be now with questions that would come up. What would be considered a dam makkah b'seicha rechem, and what some people will consider makkah b'seicha rechem. It's not really a makkah, and it's not really a makkah b'seicha rechem. It's a machla, which b'seicha rechem, which is not really a makkah, and you can't rely on it for the makkah b'seicha rechem. By definition is, or even outside the rechem, is a cut or a bruise, which we know that it's going to bleed. We don't have to know that it's bleeding right this second. We have to know that it bleeds. That's how the Alter Rebbe understands. Alter Rebbe relies on the passage like the Shach. And when you know that, it's not anymore a Shiloh Sfek Sveka. It's not Efshel Levarer. It was Nisbarer. Because a procedure was done which created a makkah which causes bleeding. Shiloh could be, if she bleeds a week afterwards, that's the Shiloh. Could be something triggered it. Could be that she did a certain form of exercise, which the stitches. You tell people after certain surgeries you can't do exercise because the stitches are going to rip or going to get damaged. So then you have then it's a suffix. You have to find out if they caused it. If a week after these kinds of procedures, a woman starts bleeding, they have to go back to the doctor. They're not. If they call the Rav has to send it to the doctor. It's not. It could be sakana. So these are the makas that refer to makkah b'seicha rechem, and essentially with this, we finish this topic of makkah b'seicha rechem, and the next year is going to be on. Actually, next week I'm not going to be able to give another share this week. and is going to be already moving on to Muberes and towards finishing the sermon.